views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I am Daren, Jaime, and of course, we thank you for joining us. For someone who asked the question, what is the Social Justice Forum all about? Well, we bring you a show that talks about the issues affecting many people, particularly in the area of social justice. We provide a deeper understanding of the issues as well as the inequities that many people face, particularly in communities of color. And then we also present multiple viewpoints, and then we encourage your feedback and civic engagement. So get ready. The Social Justice Forums starts right now. And welcome back to the show. The New York City Housing Authority, better known as NYCHA, is the largest provider of affordable housing in New York City and predominantly serves communities of color and communities with high unemployment rates. NYCHA is struggling to meet the needs of their tenants who face issues of fiscal mismanagement, toxic mold, pest, and vermin infestation, no elevators, heat, as well as no hot water. There's currently a 3-year backlog of repair requests. In July of 2020, NYCHA chairman introduced the blueprint proposal, which modifies the protection included in a tenant's lease. Joining us to share now a little bit more is the president of the Gun Hill Houses Residents Association, Robert Hall, the founder of Ojala Threads, Ramona Ferreyra, and also Reclaim Fellow of the Movement School, Jasmin Sanchez. All of our guests are currently NYCHA tenants, and we welcome you now to the show, and good to have you all.
Thank you.
Let me talk first and foremost, and I'll go ladies first with this issue. When we talk about NYCHA, and particularly now with the winter coming upon us and temperatures actually changing, talk to us about where you see things right now with regards to NYCHA and housing.
So I would say that, what we've been seeing is that NYCHA has abandoned its mission, which is to provide affordable housing that creates upward mobility for working class families and that creates a housing security for seniors and for those with disabilities that otherwise would not have housing that they can depend on in New York City. Since before the onset of COVID, NYCHA was facing a backlog in its repairs, but because of COVID, all repairs inside homes have stopped completely. And that is really troublesome because winter will worsen our needs for repairs that not only address issues such as leaks and clogs, but also we know that our heat has been troublesome for the last, couple seasons for the winter. We have higher incidences of major, roof leaks like our apartment here at Mitchell Houses. We've had a leak for 7 years. So we just feel that NYCHA really has dropped the ball. And since the arrival of Mr. Russ, the current chair of NYCHA, the focus seems to be on introducing really complex plans such as the blueprint and not on providing, safe and affordable housing for about 700,000 New Yorkers.
Jasmin, talk to me a little bit about, we hear this thing called the blueprint plan. What exactly is that? From your perspective, how do you break that down?
So the blueprint plan is another name for privatization for public housing. They try to use these fancy slogans to attract folks to want to privatize their units, right? But what happens is when public housing is starting to become privatized, which we've seen with RAD or Next Gen or NYCHA 2.0, once you go into the route of Section 8, you're stripping away the federal rights that each tenant has in public housing. And this is just another stunt of New York City and NYCHA to privatize. We do not want to sell air rights. We do not want our infills being sold. We do not want our residents to move from Section 9 to Section 8 because we know that there is not a security in these Section 8 vouchers. And, they say that, there's no money, but there's only no money for things that matter to everyday people, right? There's always money for war. There's money for tons of other things that are not important and that do not affect everyday working class Americans. So for me, being a NYCHA resident my entire life, hearing the blueprint, it can sound fancy, and some folks might say we need these dire things fixed in our homes. So they're going to say we want to go into partnership with this public-private, sector. But what we're saying as public housing residents is that that is never the case. We want to make sure that public housing remains public. It is the only low income, truly affordable low income housing stock that we have in New York City, and that it's owned and funded by the federal government. So it is their duty to ensure that we have what we need, our basic rights, our human violations. They're violating our human rights, right? And make sure that they're able to give us what they need and provide the funding and resources. This is why public housing was established. It wasn't established to convert into privatization.
Yeah. Robert Hall, president of the Gun Hill Houses Association. I want to bring you in on this conversation as well. Talk to us a little bit, Mr. Hall, about what you're seeing in your neck of the woods, and as we talk about this blueprint plan as well.
Well, when we talk about this blueprint plan, most presidents do not totally understand the plan in its entirety. This has become quite problematic. One of the reasons it's problematic is because the presidents are not educated on the thoughts regarding creativity of a portfolio, and going from Section 9 to Section 8, that's a violation, okay? We live off of the 964 Rules and Regulations, which is our Bible within the confines of New York City Housing Authority. This has become problematic because they no longer want us to go along with the program, but they want us to go down to Section 8 where they can get a more happy dollar. And that dollar is going to excruciate the idea of us being low income in its entirety. So they want to put us on the market and then eventually sell us off. And a lot of presidents are not educated on the fact that this is the floor that NYCHA is creating as we speak right now.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about evictions, and I guess I'll come to Ramona about this, because I guess there is a lot of concern on the part of city residents who live in NYCHA that if this thing continues to go forward, where resident evictions could possibly go, and especially following all that's going on with COVID-19 affecting New York City.
Yeah, so, one of the issues with the blueprint proposal, and, I think it's really important that we focus on this as a proposal that NYCHA is making, and that it has to make to not only tenants, but to elected officials at the state, city, congressional level, and at HUD, right? We are, concerned that there is a lot of vagueness surrounding the rights, as Jasmin mentioned, the Section 8 inclusion. And these things concern us specifically because in the past, what has happened when you bring in private developers and they become the landlords, basically, under lease terms or under the owners of the debt that NYCHA now wishes to take on in exchange for moving us into Section 8. And basically, NYCHA wants to borrow money and say to these banks and these private investors, we can borrow all of this debt from you because federal money can be used to guarantee that this debt is going to be paid. When that is happening and you're including private funding in the way that, public housing and public tax funds are being used, we've seen in the past that evictions have risen. So Jasmin mentioned the RAD program, she mentioned NYCHA 2.0, and these are other reiterations of, I would say, hoop dreams that have been sold to NYCHA tenants, where tenants are told, you're gonna have a new property manager come in and they're gonna repair your apartment and you're gonna get the things that you've been waiting on. What ends up happening is, which is what NYCHA has already stated as, as part of this proposal, is they make your unit basically meet the bare standards for being inhabitable. So they will replace things in your bathroom, they will replace some of your appliances. But the real issue of maintaining public housing and making sure that it's still around in 100 years is never part of that vision. So when these new developers come in, they can remove the 30% rent cap. And we already know that a lot of our neighbors have been told that they no longer qualify for public housing residents based on their income. So NYCHA is already evicting folks that make too much to live in public housing. And when we look at how a community should be inclusive of different income levels, we should have a community where you have, seniors and folks that are disabled and are below the poverty line, but you also have working professionals and, folks with a higher income, so that diversity and that mixture creates a reflection of the entire city, right? So we are really afraid that because everything is so undetermined at this point, and NYCHA has never had a trust, which is also a key component of this blueprint proposal. The trust would include folks from the private sector, folks from the public sector, and our working group that meets every Sunday, we were able to demand that tenants be included in that. So it will have some tenants, but that trust at any given point can decide to remove that 30% cap on your rents.
Jasmin, I want to bring you in and talk to me a little bit about the Green New Deal, because obviously a lot of people are talking about that as well. Talk to us about the Green New Deal, what that means to you, and for somebody who may not know about it, how that affects NYCHA residents.
Of course. I love the Green New Deal for public housing. I can speak to it so passionately as a resident. And for those who don't know what that is, really quick, a description is that a Green New Deal for public housing really invests, is the first bill of its kind to not only invest in the infrastructure, the green of a development, but also has an investment in the people that live in public housing. And no bill has ever prioritized its residents, right? And when speaking to people in public housing about why this is an exciting bill and why they should support this bill, some of the things are the things that we've already heard, right? We want our repairs to be fixed, and retrofitting the units without displacement, which is key, is something that this bill can afford to the residents of public housing nationwide, right? The other thing is the fact that we do have private contractors that come into our developments and ask for a contract of an insane amount of money. So this money is being given to private corporations to do the repairs, and we know that they're not getting done, when we should be investing in the residents that live here in two different ways. There's a program called Section 3, which already is part of the HUD program, and it's already supposed to be implemented in public housing, but it is not. It's required right now for 30%. We're pushing for 90%, and that 30% is of residents that live in public housing. They are supposed to secure the jobs, right? But we're seeing that that's not happening. So you didn't give us 30%. We're asking for 90% now, because we want to own our communities. We want to invest in our communities and be active, right? So that's one really great thing about this bill. The other thing too is that we know that there's talent in public housing. There's talent with folks that have licenses, have small businesses in regards to construction, tiling, paint work, window repairs, maintenance, everything. Why are our residents not the first to receive those contracts when we can do the work? And we've known that a community that takes care of themselves will always grow and nurture. And, this is something that has never happened. And this bill calls to provide these small business opportunities to residents of public housing. And that is really exciting for some residents to know, because one, we know that the time that it takes for these repairs to be made, but it's also, we're giving now the opportunity to residents to really begin expand their small businesses and really have that investment, not just in themselves and their families, but also in their communities. The other thing about this bill too is that it offers several grant programs that are outside of FEMA. My development at Baruch Houses, we pronounce it Baruch, but it is Baruch Houses, was affected by Superstorm Sandy, right? And had we had a program like a Green New Deal for public housing in place, we could have asked for grants and received grants outside of FEMA, which we know takes forever. Sandy happened 8 years ago. We had the money right after Sandy. They just started construction last year. So if we would have got hit again, my community would not have been in a great space, right? But they have these grant programs for resiliency so that you can think about like, this is what happened in 2012. We know that it's going to happen again because we're not doing much as a nation to reduce fossil fuel, right? So we can almost anticipate that climate change is going to affect us more so because our communities are front line and they're vulnerable. Let's plan. What is it that we need? Do we need a community center? Do we need generators? Do we need spaces for mutual aid work? Like all of these things to be more resilient. They're already in here, and these grants are separate from any money that we would get from FEMA, which is really, really important to state. And the other thing is that when we're talking about like reimagining what public housing can look like, this is a Green New Deal, right? So it will offer tons of green jobs that are unionized across the nation, but because public housing is a vast amount of property, right, in New York, it will directly affect jobs in our communities. And I think that that's really important to note, but it also transforms all of our appliances into energy efficient appliances. And what NYCHA does is that they get the cheapest thing and they give it to us, and then they have to keep coming back to build more and more when they could have just bought something that was of quality and that will last us longer, right? So we're pushing for these energy efficient energy efficient appliances so that we can start contributing to this movement of saying we no longer want to contribute to fossil fuel. If we remove all of that from our communities and we turn green, it is like removing 400,000 cars from the streets. And to be part of something that big that is actually contributing to the reduction of emissions and to the reduction of climate change, I think is profound. And why not start it with a housing stock that the federal government already owns? They own public housing nationwide. It is theirs. So start making these programs a pilot so that we can show the nation that this is what going green in America looks like. And I think that's something that they need to focus on.
Let me bring Mr. Hall in and talk about where do you go from here? I mean, obviously, you talk about the Green New Deal. I know that's something that you're also in favor of as well. Where do you go from here? And talk to me also about involvement, because in addition to having all the housing presidents, it's also about getting the housing residents behind this as well. How do you go about mobilizing with this situation here?
Well, the idea is a tremendous idea, and knowledge is power. What we have to do is educate ourselves, educate the residents on this process, and show that this process in and of itself is beneficial across the board. The opportunity for people to be able to work, the opportunity for people to have appliances that are much more efficient, all of these categories fall into the Green New Deal and the efficiency aspect. But once again, residents do not fully understand. It is our responsibility as presidents. We have to take this on to educate the direction regarding the future of NYCHA per se. All we ask for is a say, rather than people coming in and telling us what they feel is in our best interest. We need to have a say. We're surrounded by the 964 regulations, which indicate nothing should be able to go forward at this point until NYCHA and the hierarchy of the residents, which is CCOP, our citywide, agree on certain aspects. But once again, we have to educate the residents in the best interest of this growth and reproduction phase. But it's a great idea.
Before we go, I want to get an opportunity for how the public can actually be a part, to help advocate, to help raise their voice, to blend with their voices, to blend with your voices that have been out there so passionately for these issues. How does the public go about it? And also, before we go, what do you have coming up?
So we actually have two opportunities for anybody to get involved. One is every Sunday, the Residents to Preserve Public Housing, they get together at 3 p.m. and we have a Zoom meeting. That information can be found mainly on the Instagram account for Ramona the Mona, RamonaThemona. And we also have someone that's helping us set up our social media. So soon we're gonna have an independent account for that. The second opportunity is that every Monday night, we have folks that get together to help us educate and roll out the outreach platform for the Green New Deal for NYCHA. And that information is also posted on Sunrise NYC. They have a Instagram, they have a Facebook, they have a Twitter, and I also share it on my Instagram. But I would say that in addition to making sure that we have NYCHA resident leaders and NYCHA tenants involved, it is really important that every New Yorker try to support public housing residents as we try to take back control and really, push back on what is happening to public housing, because public housing has become synonymous with so many negative things. When we look at the gun violence that's been happening in the city, it is directly correlated with the fact that public housing no longer provides the resources, the assets, and the support that it did in the past. So if you have an issue with the negative things that are happening in your community and you want to see a shift take place in your community, the one place where you should be putting your energy is into NYCHA, because there is talent within NYCHA, there is economic opportunity, there is a desire to make a difference within NYCHA. And 4 years ago, every time that $1 went into NYCHA, $1.80 came back out. So if everyone that lived in New York City could support us in taking back control and making this, like Jasmin said, an example of what green looks like, and in really redefining in a tenant-led way how public housing should look in the future, we could really turn this around and become an example. But it's going to take people that really want to support a tenant-led effort. And we need help right now with social media, with outreach, with copy, letter writing. The tenants that are involved are really passionate, and we just need folks that can handle simple tasks. You don't have to have some amazing magical skill set. It could be as simple as helping us write some letters and package them to elected officials.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to leave it there, but I want to thank you, all three of you, for coming and sharing. Ramona, Robert, Jasmin, thank you for taking the time and letting us know. Of course, as we go towards the new year, we're going to keep our viewers very much up to speed. I know you guys will be back to update us as we continue to look and monitor the Green New Deal and what NYCHA has going on. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know we are taking a quick break. We will be back with more with the Social Justice Forum. Stay with us. We're coming right back with more show right after this.
When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC.
And welcome back. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented many challenges to communities all across the nation. Many have had to adapt to the new environment that 2020 simply has brought. Libraries are no different. In fact, libraries and librarians have employed an array of creative ideas while facing the challenge of continuing to provide resources to patrons and ensuring the community gets access to what they need. The Everyday Library Institute is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to support libraries and librarians in the United States and abroad. They partner with allied organizations, including foundations, philanthropic organizations, as well as not-for-profits and academic institutions to enhance the perception of libraries and librarianship through direct engagement with the public. Well, during this election cycle, tens of millions of dollars are at stake specifically for libraries, from bonding for new or remodel building projects to changing levies or taxes that can impact staffing, collections, programs, and services. Here now to share more a little bit about it is the political director of the Everyday Library Institute, Patrick Sweeney. And Patrick, good to have you here with us here on the Social Justice Forum.
Sure, I appreciate you having me.
No, well, it's glad to have you and to talk about libraries. I mean, when we talk about the issue of libraries, particularly in this COVID-19 pandemic, let's start there. Talk about how the pandemic has actually infected libraries.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting. What libraries have actually found is that their use has gone drastically higher. A lot more people are using libraries digitally right now than really ever have before. And people are really discovering a lot of the digital tools that libraries have kind of hidden for the last, 10, 15 years. People just didn't know about so many aspects of what a library has to offer online. And they're really coming to find out now. And that includes everything from more traditional things that you think a library would have, such as downloadable ebooks, movies, videos, TV shows, music that you can get with your library card, all for free, of course, but also a lot of the deeper digital kind of things that help small businesses. There's a lot of market research databases available. There are a lot of tools for entrepreneurs to start their own businesses. There's homework, after school homework help that's provided through a lot of libraries. And people are really discovering this and exploring all these tools that we had previously available. I think it's a great time, actually. I mean, yeah. Let me rephrase that. I don't think it's a great time at all. However, we do see a lot of opportunity with libraries and people discovering those resources that we have.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously for exposure, and I mean, we understand what you meant there. There's certainly people becoming more and more familiar with libraries. And I think that when we talk about libraries in this political season, as the election is just taking place, talk to us about things that really, you got funding that comes to libraries and how the library is impacted, particularly by this election.
Yeah, so every year, every library works on about somewhere around 25 to 40 library ballot initiatives across the country. That's a big aspect of the work that we do. We provide support in a number of different ways. And what we've really been looking at is tracking a lot of the elections this year. And I think we're gonna see less libraries on the ballot. And right now we're only tracking somewhere around 50. Usually there's 75 to 100 going on a presidential election day. However, that is the big aspect of, that is the biggest piece of the pie for library funding in this country, is decisions from local decision makers and local voters. And so not a lot of people really realize how reliant libraries are on the goodwill of voters, on voter support, on local legislator support. And I don't think anybody's really going to disagree with me when I say there's a lot of turmoil in the political discourse right now. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of resentment on both sides, no matter what your stance is. And libraries on the ballot, I think, are just one of those really shining examples of something that we've seen Americans come together around. People on the left and the right are both still overwhelmingly support their libraries, still overwhelmingly come out to vote for them. I think voters really understand entrepreneurship and how libraries support small businesses, small business owners, helping people with their startups, all of those kinds of things that make communities a lot more livable and financially secure and successful. And so I think, though, there's going to be some really interesting, collateral damage from that larger political discourse. I have no idea who's going to show up for these elections. Every political consultant we talk to, and we work with political consultants across the spectrum, and nobody's taking any bets on the outcome of this election or the fallout from this election, which I think is going to be the bigger impact on libraries.
Yeah, and talk to me about what could possibly be at stake. I mean, when we talk about the impact of this election, what could possibly be at stake in regards to libraries?
Sure. One of the big things at the federal level, if we're talking about presidential level politics, is that every year in the presidential proposed budget, Trump has cut the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and it's a hidden thing that a lot of people don't think about. It's not a whole lot of money. I mean, it's almost no money at the federal level for libraries, but it funds so many critical things that libraries do. And if there is another Trump presidency, then we really run the risk of losing the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And this is a program that funds a lot of things that local tax dollars can't fund legally. Or one-time projects, a lot of services to marginalized communities, a lot of services to hidden communities. It funds a lot of that kind of work, but also, I don't think people realize that this money from the federal government goes right back to their states. The states usually have some kind of matching agreement. And so it brings more money into their states to provide more library services. And it actually saves taxpayers significant amounts of money because it allows for libraries to do bulk purchases of media items, of database subscriptions, where if libraries were doing it on their own, we'd all be paying a lot more for our local library services,
Mm-hmm. And so for one who's out there watching right now saying, listen, you know what? We know the libraries are vital in our community. We hear and they've taken advantage of the library services. But yet and still, there's another faction of people who feel as though, well, we've got Google, we can do these, we've got internet. Just give a case for libraries. I mean, I know the benefit of it, but for somebody who may not have that same kind of perspective, share.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing that libraries do right now in this political environment is bring people together in a more truthful and honest way. And I think that's our biggest value add in a lot of our communities. We've had libraries for years and years, and libraries have a strong culture of providing factual, truthful, research-based information to the public. And in this time where, you can Google anything you want on Google, I mean, it really doesn't matter what you believe. You can find somebody else who believes whatever it is that you believe and have your own reality sort of created around you by surrounding yourself with the information that you want, no matter how true or untrue. And I think that sets up a really dangerous environment without some kind of core organization in our communities that really looks at factual and truthful information. And that's just the information side. When we look at, the rise of extremism in this country, and one of the big indicators of extremism is people's level of isolation. And especially now during quarantine, when people are very isolated, once this is over, we're all going to have to come back together somewhere and have a real discussion with each other, get to know each other again on some neutral playing ground, and really come to terms with some of the realities that are out existing right now. And I think libraries are a really amazing environment for that to happen because, I mean, every town has a library. There's more libraries in this country than there are Starbucks or McDonald's. Right. So, I mean, there's no better network to re-engage with each other and have real great conversations with each other and start to rebuild out of this crisis.
Yeah. Libraries are not the forgotten institution, but sometimes they very well can be. Talk to us about your work at Everyday Library. I mean, obviously, you do a great job of advocating and really making people and the public aware about the importance of libraries. Talk a little bit about your work.
Sure. So we do a lot of work to support libraries, primarily at the ballot box, but also school libraries. We call ourselves EveryLibrary because we support every library, particularly around politics and funding. And so we've worked on supporting over 107 library ballot initiatives in some shape, way, or form. All of our support for libraries is done pro bono because we believe wholeheartedly in the mission of libraries and the value that they provide to their community. And it's just one of those organizations that we don't want to see go away. So when a library goes to the voters, they call us, we help them understand how to run a library campaign, because the real nice thing about libraries is they're so homegrown that a lot of times the people who are running the campaign, they're not political operatives. They're not people who have run presidential campaigns. They're not people who have some nefarious issue agenda or anything like that. They're just people who want to see something good in their community. And they've never really worked in politics before. And so we help them understand, how do you run a campaign? How do you look at a voter file? How do you talk to voters? What does an election day look like? I mean, all of that kind of process that these people who are running these library campaigns really don't understand.
So for people who want to get connected with some of your issues, the initiatives, and the things that are going on, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, you can visit us at everylibrary.org. If you'd like to take action, sign a petition, let your congressional representatives know how you feel about them, or how you feel about libraries particularly, you can go to action.everylibrary.org. Again, that's action.everylibrary.org. And you can sign petitions and contact your reps and help them see how important libraries really are.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about 2021. As 2021 is really right around the corner right now. I know we're just coming out of an election, but at the same time, we're also dealing with 2021. How do you see things playing out, particularly for libraries as we move into 2021, given the fact that many places around the country are still navigating this COVID pandemic and, as far as going out and being in public spaces, that being diminished some?
Yeah. I mean, of course, we have all the digital access and resources that we talked about before. I think that we will see the end of COVID at some point in 2021, whether that's March or whatever the predictions are this week. But what I think is going to be really interesting that people aren't thinking about is when we put ourselves back to work as a country, when we all are able to come out, find jobs again, and all our businesses start opening, there's going to be massive hiring. The ISPs, for example, haven't committed to turning off people's internet during the crisis, which has been great, but you better believe that at the end of it, there's going to be a bill due. And when that bill comes, people are going to lose their internet at home. And I don't know if you've ever tried to apply for a job without the internet in the last 10 years, but you just can't do it. And so if we want to put America back to work, I think libraries are going to be a significant aspect of that, especially just for getting online, because people aren't going to be able to.
Yeah, it's a lot to look forward to in terms of 2021. A lot that still remains at stake when we talk about the fact of, libraries and internet access. People do use the library for internet access. And I know particularly in communities where, there's heavy rates of unemployment, poverty, the library is the biggest resource.
Yeah. I mean, how else can you pull yourselves out of poverty if, you don't have access to internet at home or a space to work? If you're in school and, maybe you've got to get out of your home life and find some quiet place to work. I mean, libraries are that refuge for a lot of people. I mean, I came up as a librarian in California. And we had a lot of children that came in just because they didn't want to be at home. They wanted to get ahead, they wanted to study, they wanted to be successful, and they couldn't do that in the environments that they had at home. So they came to the library. And I think that was so meaningful and the reason that so many of us do this kind of work, seeing those people really get the help they need to get ahead.
Well, we want to thank you for coming and sharing with us. Tell us a little bit more about, once again, how people get directly in contact with you.
Sure. Yeah, action.everylibrary.org if you want to sign a petition or take action on behalf of libraries, and then everylibrary.org if you want to find out more about our organization and about the work that we do. And we'd love to talk to you.
Patrick Sweeney, EveryLibrary, thank you so much for being with us and sharing and giving us a little bit more information into how libraries really shape our society. Thanks much.
Appreciate it.
All righty. Taking a quick break here on the Social Justice Forum. Don't go anywhere. We do have more show coming up. We'll be back in a few.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, and they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community, and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people, avoid crowds, stay home if you can, wash your hands frequently, learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
And we are back here on the Social Justice Forums. The National Retail Solutions Incorporated offers a point-of-sale platform for bodegas, gas stations, liquor and tobacco stores nationwide. The NRS platform provides robust hardware with powerful merchant software, helping retailers compete more effectively, organize their business, as well as attract customers and increase revenue. Leading up to the elections, National Retail Solutions helped advertisers run voter registration ads in bodegas across New York City and the nation. And that here to join us and share a little bit more is the president and CEO of National Retail Solutions, Elie Katz. And Elie, good to have you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Hey, thank you. And when we talk about bodegas and we talk about liquor stores and tobacco stores, honestly, during COVID-19, one of the more essential places. And I know that you guys have done some work in terms of helping them with sustainability and making their job a little bit easier throughout COVID-19. So walk us a little bit through what you do.
So we have a network of about 13,000 independent convenience stores, liquor stores, tobacco stores, coast to coast, but mostly in the inner cities, in these communities where you would find a bodega or a corner store or a party store, whatever they call it in your area of the country. Everyone has a different name for it. And they became very popular during the pandemic because they're quick and easy, right? Convenience store, you're quick and easy, run in, run out. Not too many people in the place, which is what people were looking for, right? Less congestion, less people, social distancing. And they were able to get their items that they needed to get. And we have a customer facing screen that literally talks to every single customer that comes in, because as opposed to a supermarket where you have an ad screen, you're already at the checkout. Maybe you look up, maybe you don't look up, or sometimes these ad screens are inside the aisles. This is at the point of purchase. This is at the POS system, and half of the screen actually has your receipt and the amount of money that is due to the cashier. So realistically, at that point, no matter what you're doing, I know we all live in our devices. I can barely even see my kids these days. I have to send them a text and they're sitting right next to me in order to talk to me. And I know how it is. I'm guilty of walking across the street and answering my emails at the same time as well. And I know that that's very dangerous and I don't condone it, but I am guilty of it. So I know how it is. Everyone lives inside their devices. But when you're at our point of sale, you have to look up, because it comes down to pulling out the money at that point. And that is why our network was such a powerful tool, especially when you think about the demographics that go shopping and own these independent convenience stores and bodegas. It's really a demographics that's very hard to, a lot of immigrants, very hard to target, very hard to communicate to. And we're right there. And I'll tell you, in the start of the pandemic, our network saw, I call them eyeballs, right? How many eyeballs saw our screens? Well, we were at 34 million eyeballs seeing our screens in the beginning of the pandemic. As last month, we were at 47 million eyeballs, 47 million customers saw the ads. That's a powerful network. So you understand why many, especially get out the vote and the different candidates, we're vying to try to get space on our POS network.
Yeah. And I know also for bodega owners, one of the biggest concerns, of course, in this season themselves is just staying safe, how to be able to stay safe. Share with us a little bit about what you did in regards to safety and safety concerns of bodega owners.
So these days, safety has two different meanings, but I'll talk to you about both of them. So first of all, as far as COVID safe, instantly we put up instructions, information to the bodega owner, because in addition to being able to communicate to the bodega customer, we also have the unique ability to communicate to the merchant, which is also a very an attractive piece to our point of sale system. So instantly we put up information on how they can stay safe, on the different restrictions. As the information became more available, we shared that information. But if you think back in the beginning of the pandemic, it was so confusing. What's supposed to be closed? How far are you supposed to social distance? Do you wear a mask? Do you not wear a mask? So we really tried to take the best information and share that with the merchant and try to keep them safe that way. Then on top of that, we loaded into our merchant marketplace the ability for these merchants to order hand sanitizers, masks, any PPE that they really needed to keep, temperature thermometers, etc. Any PPE that they needed to keep them and their employees safe, but also for them to sell as well to their customers to keep their customers safe. So that was the second part that we did. And now the third, and I have to tell you something, this is one of my personal quests. We built this great network for these independent convenience stores, and we won't get into all the wonderful features that our point of sale has, and the fact that it's so reasonably priced, and that's why it's been so popular. But we built the system so that our independent convenience stores could thrive and could stay competitive. But then you read the news and you hear on the news how these bodega owners have literally become prey to crime. And it's like open season on these bodega owners. So what we did was, and this is patented, we created an alarm system in the point of sale system so that when or if there is trouble, all the merchant has to do is type the code, it opens the drawer and sends a silent alarm at the same time. It's not deployed yet, but this is on our roadmap to deploy. But this is what we feel is our contribution back to the merchant to make sure that it gives them a little bit more peace of mind, a little more comfort. Because after being able to pay their employees and obviously being able to make a living, their third concern, and maybe it's up there, is how do I keep myself and my employees safe?
Right. And that's a big thing. Safety, safety is a big thing. I will admit that when I started this pandemic and coverage of the pandemic, one of the things I found to be very interesting was that of what was considered essential during a time such as this. And the word of some people were like, liquor stores, they're essential. How is a liquor store essential, somebody says. But yet and still, when we talk about alcohol and tobacco sales, talk to me about what we're seeing. Has there been a tremendous increase? Because a lot of people say, I've got to navigate, and I had it on another platform talking about anxiety and depression during this time. Have you seen alcohol and tobacco sales skyrocket during this time?
So the answer is yes. It has increased. I read somewhere where one liquor store said, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, that it was New Year's Eve every single night. So yes, it has increased. But everyone has their vice. It's a very challenging time for everybody right now. And I know my wife came to me and spoke to me yesterday about, if couples, and I hope she wasn't referring to us, but she was trying to be good-hearted. But if couples, were able to get access to more information on how to, stay calm and how to navigate through this pandemic, it could save marriages, right? And this is what's going on right now. There's so much stress and anxiety and uncertainty and cooped up and wear masks and when you're outside, social distance, but if you're in a certain area, you can't have X amount of people. It's so tiring and it's so challenging, especially when you have kids, you want your kids to lead a normal life. You don't want to traumatize them for forever. And the younger kids. So yes, this is, we're going through a very, very difficult and challenging time, and anything that National Retail Solutions can do to be helpful to our merchants, that's what we are going to do.
2021 is right around the corner. Talk to us about plans and what are you looking to see accomplished in the new year?
Well, I'll tell you one additional, I want to merge the two questions that you had in the beginning and tell you one thing that, and you're the first one to know about this. But what we are doing, you talked about safety and we talked about the power and the impact of our customer facing ad screens. So what we're going to be doing now is we are going to be donating space to law enforcement so that when there is someone that's on the run or someone that they are looking for, that they'll have the ability to broadcast that within minutes to, especially in the tri-state area where there's more of a, where it's, there's very few boundaries, to go to Queens, to go to Brooklyn, to go to Bronx, it's just a bridge or two. But within minutes, this is what happened in the Bronx. This is the guy we're looking for. So that is something that we're going to be focusing on in the next few months.
Yeah. And I want to talk to you. I mean, you talk about the tri-state area. A lot of us are in the tri-state area are Yankee fans. And when you talk about being a Yankee fan, Mariano Rivera is also one of your new spokespersons. Talk to us about that and the importance of having him as a spokesperson.
So I've now been honored to meet him twice. I personally am not a sports fan. Don't tell him. Obviously, I'm honored to have him representing our company. We got into the credit card processing business with basically the same mindset that IDT, our parent company, had with the calling cards, which is come up with a clean product. The people that are using it are tired of being ripped off. Come up with a clean product. And with credit card processing, it's the same exact mantra. Come up with a clean product. You go to any merchant and you look at their statement, they couldn't even tell you what they're being charged because it's so confusing. Even people that are veterans in the credit card processing industry cannot tell you all the different charges. So we decided enough. Okay, we are going to charge a clean rate. This is how much the charge is going to be. This is all you're going to be charged. We're going to give you free equipment. We're going to give you no contract. There's going to be no cancellation fee. So if you don't feel like you're saving money, or if you don't feel like we're the best deal, cancel and you lose nothing. And this is something that's very unique. We're changing the credit card industry. And we're also at the same time giving comfort to these independents that unfortunately and sadly have been taken advantage of. A lot of them have been taken advantage of by their relatives, right? They always say they have a cousin, a brother that's in the credit card processing business. When I sell my credit card processing to these merchants, I've really got to sell myself. When these relatives sell to their relatives, they trust them, the guard is down. And unfortunately, a lot of them have been taken advantage of. So we are fortunate to have a person like Mariano Rivera, who is a very well-respected individual, to stand shoulder to shoulder with us and promote our credit card processing to these merchants. Because he feels comfortable, we feel comfortable that we know that we are giving, listen, we may not be the cheapest, we may not be the most expensive, but one thing we are is we are what we say we are. And that's what gives people comfort.
Wow. Elie Katz, we got to leave it there, but I want to thank you for joining us and the work that you're doing with bodega owners. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Elie. Well, we've come to the end of our show today. I want to thank you for watching here on the Social Justice Forums. We invite you to join us again next week, where we will continue to elevate the conversation, bring you news and information that pertains to social justice. And if you want to catch the Recablecast, if you want to catch this show or others, please go ahead to BronxNet.org, and there you can get caught up on all of our past episodes. Until next time we meet, Daren, Jaime saying take care and thank you for watching the Social Justice Forums.